Now, an important part of President Ramaphosa's visit to the US is the management of South Africa's reputation on the global stage. President Trump has, on a number of occasions, disparaged South Africa, claiming terrible things were happening in the country, namely the perpetration of a white genocide. Managing Director at Reputation First Group at Tshepo Matseba joins us for more. Good evening, Tshepo. Thank you very much for joining us on the late edition. Your reaction to the interaction we witnessed at the Oval Office?
Good evening. I think this specific interaction was to a certain extent, an embarrassment for South Africa as a brand, and that's because while President Ramaphosa began the process with an explanation and debunking this myth that there is a genocide against white Afrikaners in South Africa. While he handled that well in the beginning, you could already tell that Ramaphosa and his team were actually ambushed because they had a specific program and that program shifted. So you can't go to bilateral relations meeting and begin with a press conference. And then it exposed the fact that it didn't seem like the entire team, the holistic team, had a core set of strategic messages for the country. For example, it got worse when each of the individuals began, from President Ramaphosa to Johan Rupert and to Kosatu, began to amplify the question of crime. And we know that in South Africa there is crime, but there's crime in the US. In fact, there was an opportunity to draw a comparison between how black people are killed in the US and how there's a claim against that white people are being killed in South Africa. There's crime everywhere around the world. And I think that was a missed opportunity. There was also a missed opportunity to articulate our strategy. And that while there are difficulties in the country and challenges, South Africa is responding to crime in the following manner. And secondly, that while there is a discussion about expropriation of land, that is done through constitutional means. And to reinforce that, and I think that other key stakeholders, especially John Steenhuisen, failed to specifically state that there is no genocide against white people in South Africa. Instead, he went there to push an agenda that seemed like he was playing party politics. And that was an embarrassment for South Africa as a nation brand and South Africa's so-called government of national unity. It was a political own goal, but it was also a reputation hazard. The opportunity was so big for all of these individuals and groups, both business and government, to speak and sing from a single core messaging hymn sheet. And South Africa has done this before. We've done it at the World Economic Forum so many times in different platforms where South Africa would speak, both private and public sector would speak from the same hymn sheet. We know that President Ramaphosa has repeatedly emphasized that we are facing crime, three priorities: crime, logistics, and then the energy crisis. And business and public society, civil society and government together managed to articulate that message and messaging consistently. But today, honestly speaking, this was an embarrassment to an extent because South Africans failed to speak in a single voice. Others began to bring up issues that were unrelated to diplomatic discussions. They really took us to the mud where we began to mop the floor with South Africa's name and reputation.
Mr. Rupert, at some point, direct a statement to John Steenhuisen, still on the conversation around crime, where he went on to say that they may be leaders in the Western Cape where he comes from. There's a lot of crime and there are gangs, in fact. So in that instance, when you keep speaking about the need to sing from the same hymn book, it was evident that to a certain extent that it wasn't all that much coordinated. But to take you back to John Steenhuisen and what you believe were his failures there to outrightly deny the claims around white genocide. He also went on to elevate this element of stock theft and said that black South Africans, in fact, are probably disproportionately affected by stock theft. What did you make of that?
Yeah, so there were three core themes amongst the three people there, or four, that there were crime. The two golfers spoke about crime, and then Rupert spoke about crime and mopped the floor with the country's name around crime, but even went further and insulted a minister of international relations in a patronizing fashion, stating that he was in the ANC Youth League, the same one where, the video was of Julius Malema, EFF president, was being sort of sung, and that he has now all of a sudden changed. I thought that was way below the line, below the belt. Now, when you look at Steenhuisen being part of the government of national unity, he ought to have access to key strategic messages that specific team were going to take. And that's why President Ramaphosa placed him there and entrusted him with an opportunity to speak on behalf of the country, to debunk the negative message about our country. But instead, in fact, he went on to say, well, we went into this GNU to keep those ones out of the room, referring to the EFF and the MK party. That's a dangerous proposition because he actually dragged South Africa further into chaos, not necessarily discussing the core strategic reason why South Africa showed up at the White House, why South Africa was in the US, and the whole message that President Ramaphosa wanted to emphasize, which was really about trade relations and emphasizing opportunities for both the US and South Africa as key strategic partners. In fact, one would argue that President Ramaphosa has probably saved the day, and one wonders whether there was value in him taking those four individuals who spoke. Yeah. I thought COSATU tried to raise their voice, but they further entrenched deeper problems about crime in South Africa, which were not a priority. So I think we really played our dirty laundry in public. And then the worst one was when two important opportunities came and we missed them. One is that there was a repeated plea for help from the Americans. America is battling with serious crimes and violence. Maybe we can help them with some of our intelligence from here in South Africa. It's not necessarily that the US has got this alma mater. If they had, they wouldn't have so many crime problems and black people being killed by the police in the US. And we could have easily referenced George Floyd as a point to make a clear comparison that there are problems everywhere in the world. And I can understand that in the war of diplomacy, you've got to be calm, and President Ramaphosa, as I say, probably saved the day. But everybody else was really about, please come and help us, please come, and begging bowl philosophy that brings Africa across as this continent of hunger, where we are always looking at the master in the West to come and help us. That was a missed opportunity for us to speak about the interventions that South Africa is actually putting in place and has put in place to deal with crime, corruption, the energy crisis, and importantly, the logistics crisis. So I think there was an opportunity missed, and the worst one was for Rupert, with all due respect, for him to sing that we need Starlink. That was preemptive. We need Starlink in every police station. Let's get the Americans to come and help us. We appreciate the potential for help, but I think as a country, we missed an opportunity to present ourselves as a key strategic partner. We are members of a BRICS nations. We ought to have known better and really reinforced the reason why we are part of those platforms and other strategic platforms. The highlight for me was when President Ramaphosa invited President Trump to come and receive this G20 presidency and to come and experience South Africa, to come and play a round of golf. I thought that was nice, and it was probably charm. But overall, the team around him let him down, especially John Steenhuisen, Rupert, and the two golfers. Really, the emphasis was on crime and crime and crime, and nothing about the strategic value and the opportunity of South Africa. And I think we failed to say there is no genocide in SA.
Tshepo, thank you very much for your time. But judging by what you've just said now, clearly we didn't acquit ourselves all that well, at least according to you, insofar as brand South Africa is concerned. But thank you very much for your views this evening. That's Managing Director at Reputation First Group, Tshepo Matseba, speaking to us there.